Hi everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today it's my Christmas video, so I hope that you're going to enjoy this. So let's roll that credit and let's see how we get on. Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. As I said to you at the start, this is my Christmas video, as my poor quality decorations tend to suggest. But I did want to get out a Christmas video for you all to watch before the end of the year. Now the thing is, I normally put one out every Friday, and of course Friday this year is Christmas Day, as will the following Friday be New Year's Day. So I thought that I would at least get one more in before the end of the year, and that I'm putting out on Thursday, Christmas Eve. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. And on that note, if you do enjoy my videos, and if you've been watching several during the course of the year, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing to do that, but it really does help me grow my audience and grow my channel. I want to reach as many people around the world as I can. I want to help as many people around the world as I possibly can. And so with that that help from you subscribing, from clicking the bell icon and giving the videos a thumbs up, adding comments, I'll always answer them too. Please do all of those things, and it really does help my audience grow. And on that note, if you want to see more videos from me, then jump on over to my Patreon. It's a growing thing. There's so much happening on there at the moment, and it is growing all the time. And the thing is that it only costs you $5 or $10 a month to get involved, and you get so much more for your money. And also you got access to a lovely Facebook community, a growing family of friends around there that are adding their work on. We're discussing it, we're getting things going in that regard. So please take a look at it, and if it's something you want to do or have a go at, get involved. Be great to welcome you on board and see you there. And don't forget, there's always a Monday night live stream. It's on at 7 p.m. every Monday evening, London time that is, but possibly not this coming Monday, possibly not the following Monday. I might take a couple of weeks off, depends how much time I get, but if I get the chance I will put one out, but if not, you'll have to wait a couple of weeks and then I'll be back on as normal. And on that note, I just say that I wanted to thank each and every one of you for the fantastic support that each and every one of you has shown my channel, both my painting channel here on YouTube, also my Patreon channel. Please, thank you all so very, very much from the bottom of my heart. You really have made all the effort to create content well worthwhile. Lovely comments, lovely support. The subscriber count is going up all the time, and I really do appreciate that, and I thank you so much. So without me rambling on, I best wish each and every one of you a very, very, very happy Christmas and a very happy and prosperous 2021. I know we're in uncharted waters when it comes to the pandemic, but please, above everything else, stay safe, everybody. Happy painting. Do lots of that. That's great to know that you're painting and you're enjoying the craft, and whatever medium you work in, that will be fantastic. I have so many ideas for both this channel and my Patreon for the next coming year, and I just can't wait to really get my teeth into doing some of that stuff and just expand everything that I'm doing, and therefore creating so much more content for you all to enjoy. And so yeah, before I do ramble, I suppose we ought to get back into this video, see what I painted. It's a snow scene, so it is very Christmassy, I hope. And well, I'm just going to leave it there and just say thanks again, everybody, and wishing you all a very happy and a very safe Christmas, and a very happy and a very safe 2021. Bye bye for now. Bye bye. Hi guys, this barn that I'm drawing now is a very old barn near Brabourne, and it is, I don't know if it's part of the estate, but it certainly is a magical old building. And the snow had been quite thick, but there was enough of it to give me the beautiful effects that you're going to see, or at least I'm going to try and paint for you this afternoon. Now the drawing I'm doing in a 6B mechanical pencil, as I normally do, just trying to get the proportions of the barn. It's got a lovely sloping Dutch roof, a couple of windows and doors on to one end, and the rest is predominantly dark. The whole of this picture really is going to be about the complementaries that I can create in watercolor, both the blues and the oranges, the warms and the cools, and they are really going to be doing everything that I need them to do, and it's really the essence of doing this snow painting. So the drawing is now done, just underlying and making sure a few marks are there for the trees and bits of bushes and scrub before I put the colour in. The colour of the sky is a very plain sky, didn't need to be any clouds in it at all. I used a cool blue, and that is all I needed to do, very little more. It just was going to be a subtle blue shade of a sunny day with the snow down. The blue on the barn, however, was a cooler, a warmer blue. Lots of ultramarine violet, bit of cobalt, and a bit of ultramarine in there as well. I put a little bit of Aureolin tinged with green or blue into the background and into the foreground, although I did decide not to use that in the background later on, but it sufficed to liven up the light in the foreground. Now I used a combination of indigo, ultramarine blue and ultramarine violet, and I made some shadow pockets for the snow over the white paper as well as over the yellow. You can see the blue has been affected by the yellow colour underneath it, but that's not a problem. It just all serves, and I'm leaving a lot of white space, which will be of course the areas of snow catching the sunlight, but a lot of this is going to come down into shadow as this snowbank descends down into the very foreground and all the scrub and the weeds and everything else that are there. Now I also added a little bit of turquoise into that blue right at the top there. I used it later as well. It just gives a more icy look to the whole area of these snow forms. Now on the end of the barn catching the sun, I put in a bit of warm tones, a bit of sienna, a bit of transparent orange with a bit of blue, just to knock that back, and left a little bit of white space in there as well, all sort of suggesting sunshine, sunlight. I'm putting in a bank of trees at the back with a warmish violet colour, bit dirty really, and a little bit of blue to go into that as well. I added some more blues into this at the base of the trees to make them a little punchier, a little darker in weight, where of course they are thickest in that distance, but none of those tones are really going to come forward. They're all going to be set back, and they will recede more so when the paint actually dries. But they do give a sense of distant trees and woodland, which around this area of Brabourne there is a tremendous amount of woodland. So anyway, I'm now painting a little bit of negative space, and I'm coming through with a bit of warm, bit of transparent orange, just to warm up some of those lovely bits of snow and all the areas of scrub that I'm going to be putting in very, very shortly. Now along this area there was an old building tucked way under all the rubbish, but I didn't or couldn't see what it was, so I decided to set this up for a lot of more scrub and just some weeds and bits and pieces. You'll see how that works out later on. I also ended up putting a nice straight line at the bottom of those trees. I felt that the distant field needed to be a very, very flat field to suggest something that had been ploughed up and covered in snow, and it's just a nice even value. Now I'm going to add in the first of the washes that will start suggesting all that debris in the foreground to the right hand side. It will extend down and it will extend up into and above the trees there, and it will shoot one or two longer tree dark forms way up into the sky to break the whole of that area up and give some form of nice composition to the whole painting as a result. I'm bringing some of those warms and cools now down through this middle ground, down past the barn, and those two beautiful lovely cast shadows across the side of the barn created by some of the trees off shot or out of the shop, as it were, to the left hand side. But they work very nicely, and they do help form the shape of the barn on that side and give it a nice little accent, which really was just sweet. It was happy to be there, and I was lucky that I saw that and put that in. Now I'm putting the first wash into the end of the barn. It's in deep shadow, but I've deliberately left a few little marks, and I'm using a sword liner. You'll notice how flexible that sword liner really is, and flicking in some negative spaces of suggested weeds and bits and pieces at the bottom of the barn. I put a little bush in green, light green to start with, on the end of it, and now I'm putting in a deeper tone of terracotta or translucent orange in the end of the barn roof, and then coming back with some of that same pigment and a bit of blue into creating some more warmth into some of these areas of shadows and trees and forms. Now I'm putting in a little bit of darker green, which will isolate the snow and the end of the barn and bring in some of that rubbish and that scrub through to the right hand side, through the area that I'm going to really sort of put a lot of work onto. And I'm putting a shadow across the field as well in the distance or middle distance. Now I'm putting in a deeper green colour and a lot of indigo, a lot of brown. I'm mixing indigo and transparent orange together in different degrees to give me different splashy effects with the scrub and the wood and all the old bushes, and I'm trying to think of all the names of different things. The blackberries for a kickoff, there's a lot of that in there. And I'm using the flicking action of the end of the tip of this brush. It really does lend itself to this sort of action. It is a fantastic brush. It's a sword liner, and it is one of the new ones from Rosemary and Company, which is the Red Dot series, which are the Sable mimics, although they are purely synthetic brushes, which is fantastic. Now I'm coming in with a real heavy dark indigo and blue mix. Also a lot of orange, and some of that's making a dirty green, but you can see how heavy that area is. It needs to support the whole picture. It needs to be sort of very, very deliberately dark and moody and threatening because of all the old bits of prickly thorn and stuff that's in there. Now I'm putting one or two of those across those pockets of snow as well, just to allow me to have the darks and then bring some different growth in terms of flicking out some different colors to suggest old stalks of old have dried out and dead planting. And I'm bringing some of that all the way through to the foreground and down to the right hand corner. I'm getting a little bit more deliberate also with the marks. They're not as random as they were. They have a little bit more of a feeling. Now I'm coming in with some of that raw orange color, that sort of, but it's not a pure orange. There's a lot of water in there so that some of the color is lost, and then there's a little bit of indigo in the strength of some of these oranges as well. It makes them not as pure, but it really does warm up. And I'm not sure what the weeds are that are dried out, but they really do work as wonderful warm accents against some of that cooler snow and the barn itself. And they really do work. And it's already proving to be a lovely sense of oranges and blues and warms and cools. Now I'm really thickening up some of those trees. Very, very gestural marks with that sword liner. They do allow itself to have these nice angular checks and sort of additions to create the trees and the scrub and the bush, adding a bit more dark into those middle ground trees and scrubs as well, just to reinforce what they are, and so they have a purpose and they do really isolate the barn. Again, I'm now putting in some of the trees. I've chosen very, very similar colors, but they are somewhat muted. They're a little grayer, and they are the distant mature trees in the fields out on the lanes, and they've got a lot of ivy growth around them, so they're putting a little bit of deeper green in on the trunk and around some of the main tree stump or some of the tree branches. Now I'm coming in and refining the barn itself, putting a few of the darks in around the edges of the roof and on that cat slide, and I've indicated the windows a little bit and edging out some of the lines of the ridge and what have you on the edge of the roof. Now some of the snow has melted away from the edge, that's why you got that nice little dark accent, and I'm going to put a little smear across that roof later on. As you can see, some of the snow is sliding down and melting away. I also indicated a few of the boards. Now I didn't try and count the boards, I just put a few marks in there just to give a sense of the boards being there on the end of the barn. Beautiful old barn. I have no idea how old this really is. Some of the ivy growth now going in along the edge of the barn, the lower part of the end wall. Dark marks, little bits of green that are poking up beyond the guttering, as it were, and not quite reaching the ground. But also using some negative space to suggest more growth and more scrub around the unkempt area around the end of the barn. The dark windows, the dark door going in now, just reinforcing those and reinforcing that little shadow area as it comes down across the edge of the barn. There is some sort of light or something on the end of the barn, which is a modern thing. I put that in. It seemed to be part of the whole setup, so it was put in as well. Now I'm coming in with a little bit more information into this real dark area of rubbish in the foreground. This is key. It does need to have this warm and sort of several layers of different blue values, blues and indigo blues and a little bit of orange in some of them, but mainly they're just giving different depths of the shadow and the depth of the penetration of the shadow, and that will allow me then to put some of the darks and the warm colors of the stalks that are poking out through the snow. So I'm really setting this area up now for the finish in this area, certainly the finish, but I wanted to put all this in so it could dry off, and then I could put in all those bits of dead stuff that's happening there. I'm going to put some trees over the other side now, and these are very similar to the big mature one. They're a bit closer, they're not as big, they're not as strong in terms of stature, but they are big, of course, because they are that much closer than the one beyond. But they're done in the same way, just a very simple line and scrub across with the sword liner. You could always do the tree canopy first and then bring up some of the trunk and the branches into those areas as you feel. It doesn't really matter, it's whichever way you're happy doing that, but it does work, and they don't have an awful lot of color. They're merely a dirty gray with one or two darker lines in there just to suggest a bit more thick area and a little bit more structure to them. But other than that, they just paint themselves and they don't need too much. I also decided to put a little bit of shadow on the end wall. There was a shadow of a few tree branches that are probably a tall one off of the camera, out of the shot as it were, but they're casting a nice shadow and sort of give a bit more interest on that end wall as well, which was very, very useful. Now I'm going to test the color, and I want to put in a deeper blue on this roof. I liked what I had, but I wanted to put in a cooler blue with, well, let's say cooler blue, a bit of cobalt and a bit of ultramarine, and a little bit of violet went into that. But it was enough to make that blue come down one or two more values, and it deepened it, and it gave it a really good sense of shadow where I wanted it. Now I'm putting in some more refined marks, and these are fairly random. Now don't make them like soldiers. Don't go up, down, up, down, up, down. Move them around and vary the mark, vary the angle of the mark, the length of the mark, and just try and think of how, if you looked at a whole field full of weeds like this, how they would sort of be leaning everywhere and doing different things. They're not like a whole row of soldiers. And I'm bringing a few down into some of that snow. As you can see, I'm starting to break up this ground coming down into the foreground, and then they're going to get heavier. And there's one or two working their way through this middle bit too into this big pile of scrub to the right hand side. Now those reds are really russety, they're oranges, they got a bit of red into them too, and they are really sort of making that color much, much stronger, and that lifts it beyond the oranges that have gone further away, as it were. I'm putting some of that real deep orange colour into the foreground now, over these darks that I've already put in, and the warm over the cool really works. And you can do it the other way around too, but you can see how they are lifting and they're sort of sitting on top of that color that's already dried. It's a stronger color and they will still be there once everything is dry. But I'm really just messing up the whole scene, having a whole heap of fun thinking of all these weeds and just banging them into place and scratching around with this brush. And you can see how you can have a lot of fun with it, and it's what this brush was really truly built for. I feel sure it was just made for scratching around and creating trees and scrub and grasses. I love it, and well, you can see I'm enjoying myself with this, and it's a whole heap of fun. And those lovely warm colors and darks across that blue really ping, they really sing out, and it sets the whole tone for the whole picture. These final bits of foreground just actually add the highlights. Really, they are the highlights. You're not painting highlights, but those little subtle bits at the end there with the scrub, with the warm and the blue, the oranges and blues, really just set it up, and to me that makes the whole picture. But it also brings out the whiteness of the paper where the snow has been left without any paint on it at all. You know, go across some of that, that's not a problem. And some of those darks with the white really punch away. But the thing is that all those darks, all those blues really put those white bits of paper and make them sort of shine, as it were. And all of a sudden, those darks in the foreground have made the depth and darkness of the barn sit back. It's pushed it all back. And that's the lovely aerial perspective. Now we can move through this sort of ridge in the snow. We could walk across that field toward the barn, beyond the barn, out through the fields in the back, and to the huge woodland that lay way off in the distance. And that's really what it's all about. That's how the aerial perspective is created. And everything as it dries, getting those colors right, the amount of water, so that when they dry they're about the right sort of value. And I'm just going back in and increasing the depth of the value of one or two of those bits of tree in this foreground, and that's probably one of the last few things I'm going to be doing. The leaves I'm putting on, I did actually change the brush from the sword liner to a small round, giving a softer mark. These are the dead, dried up dead leaves of nettles, or the not nettles, the blackberry. They've all died off and they just sit there hanging on to the branch, but they give a different look. It's not all simple sort of streaks and lines. It's now got some other shapes of green, of foliage. Now I'm putting that little streak in it. It's just one almost dry brush mark, but it suggests where the snow is melting off the steeper side of the barn and is collapsing down and revealing some of the slates underneath. Now I'm going to be putting in another tree into the middle distance. I decided another tree was needed, and so it was just a small token just to put in there and to finish off the scene and break up a little bit through the middle there, which was great. Now I wanted to put in my token few birds, and that's it. I'm calling it a day, and I'm going to wish each and every one of you one more time a very happy Christmas. Enjoy yourselves, happy painting, stay safe, see you all next year.
Then you know it's Christmas when the snow starts to fall. Then you know it's Christmas for the children above all. Then you know it's Christmas 'cause Santa's on